Hey, everybody. Welcome to BibleTruthProject.com. Today I want to talk about divine healing. Healing is something that a lot of people talk about, and especially in the church world, there's a lot of discussions about healing. There's been, obviously, for the last several thousand years, a lot of discussion about healings. And there's different theological camps with different views and positions when it comes to that. I think most people, in essence, would believe that there is something to this issue of divine healing. But they would look at a lot of people who say they have experienced that or whatever as charlatans, as frauds, and things of that nature, and would require some kind of scientific basis for believing that healing is for today. Some of this came up recently. I'm actually part of a team that does a church podcast at the local congregation where I attend, and the pastors were discussing the issue of healing. And I had actually recently been listening to some different people's thoughts on the issue. I, of course, have my personal experiences as well. But most interesting was a roundtable between several leaders of different positions that I saw on the American Gospel YouTube channel. I'll put this up here just for a little bit so you can see. This interview is quite interesting. It's 4 hours long. It is between different individuals. This is Mr. Storms, I believe, Dr. Brown, Mr. Osmond, and Mr. Peters. And Mr. Peters and Brown I have known more about. I didn't know as much about Storms and Osmond, but basically there's 4 different positions represented around the table. And it was a very interesting discussion. It's 4 hours long. And they get into a lot of different subjects, but it's essentially a cessationist or a continuist discussion is what they were having. But having said that, I am a continuist. I believe that the gifts that were active and available in the first century are active today. I don't find any scriptural basis for some kind of cessationist reality. I think cessationists' hesitations are over some of the flakiness and some of the fraudulent activities that are out there under the name of the gifts of the Spirit or healing or divine intervention. And so it's far easier to dismiss things than it is to actually see that there are things that are miracles, supernatural, and that gifts do occur, rather than to use these blanket terms. And so I guess I want to speak just from my own experience and things that I have seen in my life. I wouldn't pretend like I have all the answers, but I've experienced healings and things in life where God has supernaturally done things, and all I can testify is my own experience is related to this. So I grew up in a conservative setting. My family had left, my father had left the Anabaptist movement, if you will. So the initially Amish, then Mennonite, and left that movement and really became conservative charismatics, akin to Pentecostals, but definitely not like some Pentecostals would be classified today. And that is my background. That's where I came from, those circles. And so we were simple people out in the country who believed in the power of God, and we saw divine things happen. I would say the book of Acts was real. We saw these things happen. It's very hard to be in a setting, a little bit like what Jesus said, or not even Jesus, but the apostles, when they're outside the temple, and there is a lame man who is lame, and all of a sudden he gets up. Obviously, he's not lame anymore. It's hard to argue with somebody who's experienced something with that kind of intervention. So I guess growing up in an environment where we just believe the Bible, we pray fervently, and we saw healing. We saw things happen. We really didn't have a need to try to prove it to anybody. It was something that was real to us, and we enjoyed the benefits of that. People testified in church of different types of healing. There was one lady, I'm just going through some stories I remember as a kid of instances where one lady's ear was healed where she couldn't hear and she could then hear. Another healed of thyroid issues, different things like that. But having said all that, my own experience was I was born as a chronic asthmatic. I had asthma from a really young age, and I suffered with asthma into my adulthood. And obviously through those years, I mean, we grew up in a church where we believed in healing, and I myself as a believer believed in healing. But I didn't experience that kind of healing, for obviously for many years. And it was a prayer of mine that God would heal me. It wasn't something I dealt with all the time, but I had to have an emergency inhaler with me if I traveled and things of that nature. And it was something I dealt with. And into my adulthood, it was actually the first time in Israel. I'll just tell you my story of healing. I mean, you can believe it or not. It's up to you. You don't have to. It really isn't anything that glamorous, but I had gone to Israel, and just for some backstory, 3 years before that, we had been in Central America, and I had a massive asthma attack that was really brutal. And, I ended up going to the doctor, and, I survived, but it was tough. But anyway, I'd gone to Israel, and we were doing some hiking and things, and hiking was always a challenge. I had exercise-induced asthma, and so anytime you would exert yourself, my lungs tended to lock up, and I just simply couldn't get enough air. And I remember climbing Arbel, and I was, Lord, like I climbed it, but with much difficulty, and my lungs really struggling. And I just prayed, Lord, you can heal this. And I don't know the words to pray. I don't have the words. I don't know the words. In other words, it's not a magic thing of you say the right string of words or whatever. It's just with an honest heart. Father, I please heal me. Like, just heal me of this issue. I know you can, and I just ask. And anyway, as I was climbing this hill, I prayed that prayer, and it was an earnest thing. But anyway, time went on. I think a day or two passed, if I remember right, and we went back to climb that hill again. We actually ended up climbing that cliff a few times on that trip. And I went to climb that hill, and I noticed as I was getting up that my lungs were not locking up. And I was surprised. This was very unusual for me. And I could breathe all the way up, and I thought, well, maybe I'm just getting into better shape or something, because we did a lot of hiking and, just getting used to the climate. And I noticed as I got to the top, I wasn't breathless like I normally would be. Didn't have the tightness, the restriction, the locking down and the cough and all that good stuff. And got to the top, and I'm like, well, this is different. Wow, what is this? And I'll say from that time until now, and that was 13 years ago, I have not had a single asthmatic episode. That was it. I don't know. At the time, I'm like, well, I'm not really going to claim healing, because what if it doesn't last? Because obviously, if it comes back, I'm not healed. Well, all I can say is that problem went away. And that's it. That was it. That was the end of that issue. That's one story of healing. Another story of healing is in our marriage. So I'm trying to think. We were married a couple of years before we tried to start a family, and we unfortunately had 2 miscarriages. And I remember praying through that, Lord, heal, and because there were concerns. Heartbeat, we went in for ultrasounds, and there were heartbeats. And so that's how we discovered the miscarriages. But anyway, you pray that somehow something would change, but it's past tense. It is what it is. It happened, and you just prayed. And so we went through a season of searching. Like, well, Father, what are you saying? Is this just not right for us? That sort of thing. And 8 years ago is when we found out we had twins. We found out we were expecting. We went in for an ultrasound, and we found out we had twins. And I remember so clearly that answer of what we had lost and restoration. Some people say, well, that's not really healing. Well, to us, it certainly felt like it. It wasn't that we went through any therapies or anything. There were prayers prayed. There was hands laid on. There was words of life spoken to us, and God heard and answered with the twins. And it's a miracle. It's actually why I named them Samuel and Eliana, because the name means God has heard and God has answered. And so that has been a part of, our story and things that we have gone through. And sure, people get sick and people deal with things, and healing isn't always instant. Sometimes healing takes time. But that's personal experience. And I look at other situations where certain parts of things are healed, other things are not healed. We don't always understand it, but the fact remains that healing is real. The Father heals. If we wouldn't believe in healing, we wouldn't go to a doctor. Of course we believe in healing. We seek healing. We want healing. We can't always answer why a particular issue isn't resolved. It could be a faith issue. There were issues like that in the Bible where people did not have enough faith. Jesus would use the words, be it an according to your faith. And some people just didn't have enough faith. And that might be offensive to some people, the idea that they don't have enough faith. As we were speaking about this the other night, my dad said that too. For years, he had a horrendous allergy problem that basically housebound him from August through the end of September. And for 50-some years, he dealt with this issue, even though he prayed for people and they were healed and things of that nature. And one day, God was dealing with him in some things, and he changed his prayer to, Lord willing, you will give me hay fever this year. Because before he'd always pray that you would take it away. In this case, he realized that it had been finished. Jesus had paid the price. And so he started praying that way. And that year, I think it was 52 or 53 years old, he had no fever, no hay fever, or allergies, okay? This is like debilitating allergies that he endured for 50 years plus. And he'd have to, if he went outside, he actually had to use a powered circulation device to filter the air. Otherwise, he would be so miserable he couldn't function. And I grew up with that. I mean, Dad had this base helmet when he went outside to do anything during that season because he just simply was that allergic. 50-some years. And then all of a sudden, a little thing like that, God deposits the faith in his heart and he's healed. And he literally has not had it now for, I think, 14 years. And he went back and did tests. And here's the interesting thing. He's still highly allergic to the substance, but he has absolutely no symptoms. Nothing. He's healed. No issues. So healing is something we absolutely believe in. Some people would say, well, you need to go to the doctor and all that. Well, I'm not coming from a claim standpoint. I'm just telling you experience. I don't have to prove anything. You don't have to believe me. But there are cases where healing is real. Healing is part of our life. And this is one of the benefits that God wants to give us. And if you're going to have a criteria by which, everything has to measure up to your own standards, you're not going to see healing. Unbelief hinders healing. Let's put it that way. People in the Old Testament, if they didn't have, or in the time of Jesus, if they didn't believe, they didn't receive. That was a fact of that situation. Some people would say, well, what about word of faith and all the other stuff? Well, that's a different discussion. But all I can tell you is that healing is for today. And yes, it is based on faith and circumstance and God's will. And there's a lot of factors that play into it, but it is real. I've experienced it. Others have experienced it. And I approach it every time of, listen, we know that we are mortal and that we will at one day meet our end. We know that's a fact. But God has given us benefits through the Spirit and through faith that if we have it within us, that we can receive these benefits. And not everybody has the faith. Not everybody is at that point where God can operate in that sense. You can say, well, God is all powerful. Well, yeah, God is all powerful, but look around you. God does not stop people from doing things every time. It might challenge your theology if you are one who believes in sovereignty exclusively. I tend to view God as sovereign, but I also view that God created a space where his sovereignty is limited by our free will. So there is a fusion of things in the universe. So ultimately, yes, God is sovereign and holds us in his hand and his will be done. But at the same time, people do have free will and we are held in that reality. But anyway, things to think about, things to ponder. I just wanted to share my experience because it's interesting. I was on Twitter the other day. There was a big kind of explosion by Mr. Sean. I don't know his last name. He's a singer, I think, from more of the Bethel movement. Anyway, there was somebody I was following had mentioned it, and this other individual responded very poorly to the comment based on healing. And the personal story is, I know this individual's wife has gone through a lot of pain and suffering for a chronic medical condition and didn't experience healing. And this statement would have come off as challenging that faith, and it was very offensive to the individual. But having said that, we have to be honest about unbelief. If we don't have enough faith to believe that God's going to do it, that's okay. God's not going to judge us for that. I just don't have enough faith. I don't know what to say. It's okay. Honesty is where we begin. We don't criticize and throw stones at each other. There are other people who have a greater measure of faith than what we do. There are other people who have a gift of healing, who have a gift of miracles, who have a gift of prophecy. We may not have those gifts. That doesn't mean we're any less loved in the sight of God. And so, brothers and sisters, even though we have different theological positions, we follow the same master. And one thing we can all agree on is Jesus healed, Jesus cast out demons, Jesus ushered in the reality of the age to come in the kingdom in his presence. And he said that his followers would even do greater things and manifest the power of the kingdom around us as well. And so it is based on our faith and our understanding of releasing the power of God through our faith in this realm. God bless you.